The most common complaint I hear about Battleship gameplay in World of Warships Legends is that most battleships just tend to sit in the back of the map past their spawn, being backline Bettys, taking sniping shots at ships all the way across the map, probably missing, not dealing a whole lot of effective damage, and just not getting a whole lot done. And to some extent, I agree with that complaint because I do see a little bit of that here on the high seas. But I also see a lot of other things that people don't talk about enough. If those battleships are not sitting in the back of the map being backline Bettys and doing ineffective stuff, then alternatively, they're pushing straight into the enemy, maybe even into a cap 5 minutes into the game, getting themselves caught in a crossfire and taking an early return trip back to port. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of in between, or if there is in between, then maybe the battleships do push out of spawn, but they don't push in far enough to overextend, and then you've got two of them sitting together in the same grid square, ensuring that they will not obtain any kind of crossfire, and making it very easy for all the enemy ships to angle against a source of fire coming from one part of the map. In my opinion, if you're playing a battleship, you want to avoid all of this, but that can be difficult. It's very difficult, in fact, to determine when is a good time to push in and when is not. And the reason I start off with this sort of little discussion is because, of course, we're playing the legendary tier USS Ohio, but we're running a brawler build in the sense that we've got a commander like Willis Lee. We're actually using the Autobot Optimus Prime, but he basically is Willis Lee for all intents and purposes, and we've got a secondary build. So we've got Hipper as one inspiration, we've got the Porcupine skill, and we've got the secondary mod in the second mod slot. Of course, in the fourth mod slot, we're still running the Epic Artillery Plotting Room, just because the increase to dispersion, I feel like, is not worth giving up in favor of better secondary DPM. So, in the back of our minds, we have it in our heads that we want to push in and we want to get these secondaries on target. The range I've got on the build is, I think, 10.6 or 10.7 kilometers. So the Salem up here is coming into range, and we'll see the secondaries open up momentarily. Hopefully, we'll also get a shot on him with our main guns. We are, of course, sporting 457mm guns, which can overmatch 30mm of armor plating. Salem has, I think, 27 pretty much everywhere. It might actually have 30. Regardless, we overmatch. So we do get a good, decent chunk on him, but we cannot push in here. See what's happening to the cruiser inside of the Alpha Cap. We've got a Shimakaze out there, we've got that Salem hanging around the island, and we have at least two battleships out in the distance. This tells us, just by looking at the positions of the Reds on the minimap, that we cannot push in to this section. If we push in, the Salem will farm us with his HE, the Shimakaze will torpedo us, and the battleships in the distance, if they spread out, which they kind of are, will catch us in a crossfire and we won't be able to angle adequately to both of them. And even if we could, the constant stream of HE spam and the threat of torpedoes is enough to remove a whole lot of our hit points really fast. So we've got to kite away. But at the same time, we do want to push in. We want to get these secondaries on target. But sometimes when you're playing a brawling battleship, the time to push in doesn't come until much later in the game. 4 minutes have elapsed thus far. We've lost the cruiser that pushed into Alpha. No surprise there, really. But we have to evaluate, what do we do? And we also want to look at the position of the blue team when trying to find a good position for ourselves. We've got one battleship and one cruiser hugging each other, sort of south of the Alpha Cap, sort of between Alpha and Bravo. There's another battleship facing Bravo directly, posted up near an island, bow in, as if he's playing a cruiser. And then we've got two battleships off to Charlie, one near the islands and one kiting away sort of toward the corner of the map. So, not the worst positioning on the part of the blue team, or the red team for that matter. Not the best either. but no real openings for us. Now, luckily, we are built for concealment. We have the concealment module, and the other inspiration next to Hipper is Condo, so we're enjoying a 13-kilometer detectability by sea. Theoretically, especially since there's no CVs in this game, theoretically that means we can push in further without getting spotted. And that's exactly what's happening here. Now, the enemy Shimakaze is still alive. He could reveal our position at any moment, but the idea is to get near these islands between Alpha and Bravo. From there, we may be able to get the broadsides on the GK or on the other two battleships that were north of Bravo, should they decide to push south. You can see the grayed out icons up there. All of them should be broadside to our position on the map, and that is what we're looking for when we're evaluating the positions of the enemies on the map and evaluating the positions of our team. We want to go somewhere where our teammates are not, and we want to go somewhere where we can catch the broadsides of pushing ships, particularly battleships and cruisers. GK makes what should be a fatal error. He beaches himself on an island broadside to me and a battleship behind me and this Minotaur, I guess, that's right behind me as well. Minnow is smoking up now. GK manages to get away without taking a whole lot of damage. And you can see our guns are not the most effective, which leads me into segueing about the sort of issue with the Ohio. Now, normally I run this thing with an Azurlane, New Jersey at the helm, or maybe a William Sims, and I suspect most people who own this ship probably do the same, because you're faced with a dilemma on the Ohio. On one hand, it can operate with a dispersion commander like Azurlane, New Jersey, or like William Sims, and it can operate very well, because these are, in my opinion, the best American battleships guns in the game. There are 8 of them, 457. They pack a huge alpha. They've got good accuracy for the most part, and they've got great pen. So in one sense, you do want to build into those, especially because you can get a little bit of extra range out of William Sims or AL New Jersey. We only have a range of 17 kilometers, which is pretty short for a battleship. There are a lot of cruisers out here that probably outrange us. So there's that. And you give up that if you're going to use somebody like Willis Lee or Optimus Prime in order to get the secondary build. You'll lose out on the gun range, you'll lose out on a bit of accuracy too. What you do gain, though, is of course range on the secondaries, and then you have access to the Master Mechanic skill, which synergizes very well with one of the unique gimmicks on the Ohio, and that is the quick cooldown time on the repair party. It reloads in roughly 35 seconds or so. That's very short. And if you've only got 3 of them, which is all you can get with someone like Sims or Azurlane, New Jersey, you can end up going through them pretty quickly. And so if you want to play this as more of a brawler, you really should take more with Master Mechanic. It'll keep you alive for longer, especially since the cooldown is so short. Of course, we are also, you might have noticed, using the spotter plane in the second consumable slot, whereas we probably should be using the secondary mod in order to synergize with our build. The reason we're not is because I simply forgot to switch them. But the plane is going to come in handy. And now, the game has pretty much come to the late game. We're 6 minutes left. There's just 4 enemy ships alive versus 5 of us. So this is make or break time, and it's still technically anybody's game. But now is the time where, if we're going to push in, we finally can. We didn't have an opportunity up until this point. And even now, it's a little bit risky as the Yamato citadels us, I think, right through the bow there. We've still got Yamato, I think, an enemy Ohio, and then that's Salem over in the Alpha Cap. Now that's 3 ships versus our probably 1. And as we move toward them, we're trying to help our team take out the Des Moines. It looks like somebody there succeeds. But now is the appropriate time to push in. We know the positions of all 3 of our enemies. They're directly in front of us. And theoretically, we can take a good angle of approach. Now, the question is, do we go left or right around this island? The answer depends on what the red battleships are going to do, and it also depends on the Salem here. Of course, the island is preventing these guys from spotting us, so long as the Salem doesn't peek around the corner of that island. So we'll be able to get close to the island without the enemy ships knowing which way we intend to turn. And that can be valuable in terms of positioning and getting the drop on the enemies. But that Salem is a problem. He's going to reveal what we're going to do if he comes around that island again. And frankly, he's been living a charmed life this entire game. We've taken quite a few shots at him to little avail. But if we look at his position on the minimap, we'll note that he is in fact broadside to us. So if he comes around that island, hopefully he's going to be a little bit overconfident. And what do you know? He is showing broadside. And unlike cruisers like the Wichita, the Salem Citadel is very easy to hit. So we finally are able to tap it twice. We take him out for a dev strike, and it puts us over 110,000 damage done. But now we go to the sequence that gives the video its title. One thing to consider if you are trying to brawl is that enemy rams can end your brawl before it even begins. Now, of course, we elected to go left around the island, but the Salem did spot us. So both the Ohio and Yamato, or maybe that's a Musashi, I don't know, both of them know exactly where we are, and the Ohio is coming straight for us. Of course, what he intends to do is the very, very sad thing. Note he's on full health, or almost, near enough. So he doesn't need to do this, but he is going to ram us as we get a Citadel into the Musashi. I really wish he would have come around our side and tried to, drive by us. But no, he rams us. It puts our damage up to 211,000 and gives us the high caliber, which is nice. But save for that ram, I think if we had gotten past the Ohio, no question we would have taken out that Yamato or Musashi. He was broadside to us, and we already got three Citadels on him. He's got no HP left. One quick reload of the guns, he would have been gone. And the Ohio's turret traverse is lightning quick, so we would have been able to get the turrets on target against the enemy Ohio, who likewise would have been able to get his turrets on target to us if he had just gone around our side. He might have been able to get our broadside and take us out with his guns without losing his life, but instead he chose to ram. And that is something you need to be on the lookout for in brawling scenarios. We finally came to a place in this game where we could push in, and you could see how we could have been successful had we not been rammed. But if you're going to push into enemy battleships or any enemy ships, even if they are full health, they are going to ram you. Or sometimes they are. So you need to take precautions. I think ultimately, since we were revealed, we probably should have waited before going around the island, maybe tried to go the other way, maybe even turned completely around and started kiting. We still would have had our secondaries on target, but we might have avoided the ram. So, the pitfalls of the brawling battleship. Finding when to push, and when you finally find a time to push, avoiding the ram. Very difficult these days. Hope you enjoyed the video, though. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.